Chapter 1. The Girl in the Ashes. The village of Ashvale still smelled of smoke. Even 3 years after the fire, it clung to the crumbled stone walls and blackened beams like a curse that would not lift. Lyra brushed soot from her hands as she worked the glassblower's furnace, the heat biting her skin, the air thick with ash. She had learned not to cough. Coughing made you look weak. Weakness drew attention, and attention in Ashvale could be dangerous. Her father's shop was one of the few still standing, though barely. A cracked roof, scorched shelves, but the furnace burned steady. Every day, Lyra shaped shards of glass into cups and bottles for traders who passed through, men with hard eyes and little patience. She kept her head down, worked fast, and prayed they wouldn't notice the strange glimmer in her eyes when she looked too long into the flames. But at night, there was no hiding. The dreams always came, dreams of silver fire licking across the horizon, a voice calling her name, not Lyra, but something older, something deeper. She never remembered the words, only the pull. The call left her trembling awake, staring at the scar of the moon through a broken shutter. This morning was no different. She pushed through the market crowds with a basket of glass trinkets to sell, hoping to earn enough to buy bread and salt. Ashvale Square was loud, desperate. Peddlers shouted, children tugged on cloaks. Soldiers in dark armor patrolled with their swords bare, though there was no battle here, just fear. A drunkard bumped her basket, shattering 2 bottles. She dropped to her knees, hands stinging as she tried to gather the shards before the soldiers noticed. But then she felt it, a heat rising in her palms, unbidden, the silver spark. "No, not here," she whispered, clenching her fists. But it was too late. The shards in her hands glowed. The faintest wisp of flame curled up from her skin, not red, not gold, but silver, moonfire. The crowd gasped as one. "Witch!" someone hissed. "Bless it!" another whispered. The soldiers turned. Lyra's heart thundered. She stumbled back, glass raining to the cobblestones, eyes wide with terror. The silver light faded as quickly as it came, leaving only the echo of heat in her blood. She looked at the villagers' faces, some fearful, some hungry, as if they'd just seen a coin fall to the ground and wanted to claim it. But then she saw him. At the edge of the square stood a stranger with ink-stained hands and a bundle of scrolls at his belt. His eyes locked on hers, not with fear, not with hunger, but with recognition. As if he had been waiting, as if he knew exactly what she was. Lyra turned and ran. Behind her, shouts rose, boots thundered, the soldiers gave chase. The girl in the ashes had been seen, and nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 2. Whispers of the Old Blood. Lyra didn't stop running until her lungs burned and her legs buckled beneath her. She stumbled into an abandoned alley, pressing her back against a wall of cracked stone. Her hands shook as she tried to smother the memory of that light, silver flame, alive in her palms. It was impossible. It was forbidden. "Quite the spectacle back there," a voice murmured. Lyra's head snapped up. The stranger from the square stepped into the dim light. He wasn't armored like the soldiers, nor ragged like the villagers. His robe was travel-worn, yes, but his eyes were sharp, restless, the kind that never stopped searching. Ink stains marred his fingers, the sign of a man who lived in books more than in the world. "Stay back," Lyra warned, pressing herself tighter against the wall. "I don't know you." "And yet I know you. I saw it. Moonfire." The word made her flinch. She shook her head violently. "No, I don't know what that was. I can't." He cut in, voice low but steady. "You can, and you must. The house of Elioria is gone, but its blood survives in you." Lyra blinked at him, the words making no sense. Elioria. That name belonged to bedtime stories, to ancient ballads about the moon-blessed guardians who had once defended the realm from the Hollow King, tales no one believed anymore. "They burned with the rest," she whispered. "Everyone knows that." "Everyone believes what the crown tells them to believe," the stranger said grimly. "But the old blood endures, and if the soldiers saw what I saw, they'll hunt you until you're nothing but ash." Lyra's heart thudded painfully. "Why should I trust you? For all I know, you'll sell me to them yourself." The man tilted his head, considering her. "If that were my intent, I would not be here. My name is Kaelen. Once I served as a scholar in the king's own library. I read things not meant for eyes like mine, secrets, prophecies, and one of them spoke of this day, a girl of ash and fire, called to waken the Moonfire once more." He took a cautious step closer, lowering his voice. "That girl is you." Lyra's breath caught. She wanted to laugh, to deny it, to run again. But something in his eyes stilled her. Not greed, not fear, recognition, and perhaps the faintest flicker of hope. A horn sounded in the distance, sharp, commanding. Soldiers. Kaelen's head turned sharply. "They're closing the gates. We must leave, now." Lyra looked past him, toward the dark streets leading out of the market. Her father, her home, everything she had known bound to this ruined village. Could she abandon it all? But the silver flame stirred in her veins again, pulsing with a rhythm not her own. She realized with sudden clarity that staying would doom her, and perhaps the entire village too. She nodded once, breathless. Kaelen reached out a hand. "Then come. Your life as you knew it is over, but your story, your true story, is only beginning." For a heartbeat, Lyra hesitated. Then she took his hand, and together they vanished into the night. Chapter 3. Flight Through the Hollow Woods. The gates of Ashvale slammed shut behind them, iron clanging like a death knell. Lyra and Kaelen slipped through a hidden path at the edge of the fields, moving fast beneath the pale wash of moonlight. The cries of soldiers carried through the air, but the night wind swallowed their shouts, muffling them into the distance. They did not stop until the black outline of the hollow woods rose ahead, trees twisting like skeletal fingers against the sky. Even from afar, the forest seemed wrong, too still, too silent. "No," Lyra whispered, pulling back. Kaelen's face was pale but resolute. "The hollow woods will hide us. Soldiers won't follow. They fear what lurks within." "Shouldn't we?" she asked. "Yes," he admitted, "but we have no choice." They stepped beneath the canopy. The air turned colder at once, thick with the scent of dead earth and something sour, metallic. Branches knotted above them, strangling out the moonlight. Lyra could barely see Kaelen's outline as they pressed forward. Every sound seemed amplified. The crunch of dead leaves, the hiss of unseen creatures slithering away, the pulse of her own racing heart. And then came the growl. Low, rumbling, too close. Kaelen froze, one hand lifting in warning. His other hand slid to a small dagger at his belt, pitiful against the sound that prowled the shadows. The growl deepened into a snarl. From the darkness leapt a shape, wolfish but wrong. Its body shimmered like smoke, fur patchy and black as pitch, eyes glowing with a sickly yellow light. A hollow wraith. Lyra staggered back as the creature lunged. Kaelen slashed his dagger wildly, the blade passing through its form as though striking fog. The wraith only snarled louder, its jaws snapping inches from his face. "Run!" Kaelen shouted, though his voice cracked with the futility of it. But Lyra did not run. Her blood burned, her palms tingled, and before she understood why, she thrust out her hands. Silver fire erupted. It burst from her skin in a torrent, a blaze that lit the trees like dawn. The wraith shrieked, its body unraveling into tatters of shadow, dissolving into nothingness with a hiss like boiling water. Silence fell. The silver flame dimmed, flickering back into her palms before vanishing entirely. Lyra swayed, knees buckling, breath ragged. Kaelen stared at her wide-eyed, dagger trembling in his hand. His voice was hushed, almost reverent. "Moonfire," he whispered. "By the stars, it's real." Lyra stared down at her hands, still tingling with heat, still faintly glowing. Terror and wonder warred in her chest. She had saved them, but the fire had answered her call far too easily, as though it had been waiting. Kaelen reached out, steadying her by the arm. His grip was firm, his gaze burning with conviction. "You are not safe anymore, but with that power, Lyra, you might be the only one who can save us all." The forest swallowed his words in silence. Above them, the wind sighed through the twisted branches, as if the hollow woods themselves were listening. And for the first time, Lyra felt the weight of a destiny too heavy for her shoulders, pressing down, demanding she carry it. Chapter 4. The Band of Strays. By dawn, the hollow woods had thinned into rolling hills. The pale light of morning spilled across wild meadows, heavy with dew. Lyra and Kaelen trudged along a half-forgotten trail, both weary, both silent. For hours they had spoken no words, each lost in thought. Lyra could still feel the echo of silver flame in her veins, restless and alive, as if it belonged to someone else. Kaelen's eyes kept flicking toward her, full of awe and caution all at once. It was the laughter that broke the silence. A sharp, mocking laugh, followed by the unmistakable twang of a bowstring. "Don't move," a voice called from the brush. Lyra froze. From the shadows of the hillside, 3 figures emerged. The first was tall, armored in mismatched leathers, a scar running jagged from his temple down across his cheek. He held himself with the ease of a soldier long accustomed to violence. A mercenary, no doubt. Beside him stood a woman with healer's robes, though her expression was anything but gentle. Her dark hair was bound in a braid, and her eyes burned with suspicion. She clutched a satchel of herbs and blades alike. And last, a wiry figure, grinning ear to ear. A thief, by the look of him. Daggers at his hips, hands twitching as though itching for mischief. He was the one who had laughed. "Well, well," the thief drawled. "What have we here? A runaway scholar and his glowing little friend." Lyra stiffened. "We're just passing through." The scarred mercenary stepped forward, resting a hand on the hilt of his sword. "Through land watched by Prince Corvin's men, that brave or stupid." Kaelen's voice was tight but steady. "We want no quarrel." The healer snorted. "No one wanders these hills without quarrel. You're running from something, and in my experience, people who run bring trouble." The thief chuckled. "Trouble's profitable. I like them already." Lyra's pulse quickened. She glanced between them, weighing flight against futility. The hollow woods behind them, soldiers somewhere beyond, and now this. The mercenary's eyes lingered on her. "The girl," he said slowly. "What's her story?" Before Kaelen could answer, the thief leaned in, grin widening. "Didn't you see it? The way she looks at you. She's hiding something. Something shiny." Silver heat stirred in Lyra's palms. She clenched her fists, desperate to hold it back. Kaelen raised a hand, firm. "Enough. If you know the dangers out here, then you know we cannot afford enemies. Travel with us or leave us be." For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then, to Lyra's shock, the mercenary chuckled. "You've got a spine, scholar. Fine. We'll see where this road takes us. The name's Riven." The healer crossed her arms. "Mira, don't expect me to patch your wounds if you get yourself killed." "And I," Tamsin said with a dramatic bow, "am Tamsin. You'll thank me later." Lyra blinked at them all, bewildered. Allies or dangers in disguise? She couldn't tell. But as the five of them began walking together down the road, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. A flicker of hope. For the first time since the fire, she wasn't alone. Chapter 5. Trial by Flame. The road wound upward into jagged cliffs, where the bones of an ancient temple clung stubbornly to the rock face. Its pillars were cracked, its carvings faded, but even in ruin, the temple of Silora carried an air of reverence. The very air seemed charged, humming with a power older than kings. "This is it," Kaelen whispered, awe softening his voice. "The place where the moonfire was first kindled." Lyra stared at the temple with unease. The ruins loomed like a half-buried memory, as though they had been waiting for her. She couldn't shake the feeling that the stones themselves were watching. Riven grunted. "Doesn't look like much." "Most sacred things don't," Mira muttered. Tamsin stretched lazily, grinning. "I'll just wait out here. Temples make me itchy." But when Lyra stepped forward, the ground trembled. A low vibration rippled through the pillars, dust raining from their cracks. The doors, two massive slabs of obsidian, groaned open of their own accord, revealing a chamber bathed in pale light. "Only she goes," Kaelen said quickly, eyes fixed on Lyra. Riven frowned. "Alone? That's madness." "It's tradition," Kaelen insisted. "The trial of flame is meant for the air alone." Lyra's mouth went dry. "And what happens if I fail?" Kaelen met her gaze, sorrow flickering there. "Then we bury you here." The words offered no comfort. Still, Lyra stepped inside. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow. At its center lay a great brazier, cold and empty. As she approached, the silver flame within her stirred, restless. A voice filled the air, not spoken, but echoing inside her mind. "Child of ash, child of fire, prove yourself." The brazier flared to life, silver and white, rising like a tide. Lyra stumbled back, shielding her face. The flames swirled and shifted, forming visions. She saw warriors of old, cloaked in silver light, standing against an endless tide of shadows. She saw the hollow king, a figure of smoke and hunger, his hollow eyes burning with cruelty. And she saw herself standing alone against him, her body wrapped in the same moonfire. "No," she gasped, "that can't be me." The flame roared higher, searing her skin, pressing into her chest like molten steel. She screamed as it surged into her, tearing at her bones, her blood. Every instinct told her to let go, to run, to die.
But somewhere in the agony, a voice whispered, softer than the rest, like the brush of a mother's hand. "You are not the end, Lyra. You are the beginning." She clutched the flame to her heart, and it answered. Silver fire exploded outward, filling the chamber with a brilliance so bright it turned the carvings to rivers of light. For a moment she felt weightless, both herself and something more, connected to every ancestor who had carried this power before. When the light faded, she was on her knees before the brazier, trembling. The fire had gone out, but in her hands silver sparks danced freely, obeying her call. She was not just a girl from Ashvale anymore. She was heir of Aeloria. When she staggered outside, her companions stared. Riven's hand slipped from his sword. Mira's eyes widened. Even Tamsin stopped grinning. Kaelen bowed his head. "The Moonfire lives." Lyra lifted her gaze to the rising dawn. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the fire inside her. For the first time, she welcomed it. Chapter 6. The Crown's Hunt. The dawn after Lyra's trial was quiet, almost deceptively so. Mist clung to the hills, softening the ruins of the temple behind them. For a moment, it felt as though the world itself held its breath. That illusion shattered when the horn sounded. Low, thunderous blasts rolled across the valley, the kind used not for warning villagers, but for war. Kaelen's face drained of color. "They've found us." From the ridge above, soldiers poured down like a dark tide. Armor gleamed, banners snapped in the wind. At their head rode a man cloaked in crimson and black, his armor engraved with the sigil of the crown, a serpent biting its own tail. His helm was off, revealing a face sharp as a blade, with eyes that glinted cold steel gray. "Prince Corvin," Kaelen muttered, venom in his voice. Lyra's stomach knotted. She had heard the name whispered in Ashvale, a man who ruled through fear when his father could not, who relished the hunt more than the throne. Corvin reined in his horse at the foot of the hill, surveying them like prey cornered for sport. When he spoke, his voice carried easily over the morning air. "So, the little spark shows herself." His smile was cruel, thin. "I've ridden far for this moment." Riven cursed under his breath, hand tightening on his sword. Mira drew closer to Lyra, her healer satchel clutched like a shield. Even Tamsin stopped grinning, his daggers drawn, eyes darting for a way out. "Stay behind me," Kaelen whispered to Lyra. Corvin lifted a gauntleted hand, and the soldiers surged forward. Steel clashed against steel as Riven met them head-on, his blade flashing in brutal arcs. Mira hurled vials that burst into choking smoke. Tamsin darted through the chaos, striking from shadows, vanishing before blades could find him. But for every soldier they cut down, 3 more pressed in. Lyra's pulse hammered in her ears. The moonfire stirred, begging to be loosed. She clenched her fists, trying to hold it back, terrified of what it might do if unleashed fully. Then a soldier's blade slashed across Kaelen's shoulder, and his cry of pain ripped through her. Something inside her snapped. Silver fire erupted, not as a flicker, but as a storm. It burst from her body in a blazing wave, flooding the valley with light. The soldiers staggered, blinded, their armor glowing red-hot under the searing heat. Horses reared and screamed. And Corvin only smiled. He raised his arm against the glare, watching her with cold amusement. "So the tales were true," he murmured. "Moonfire, alive again. How delightful." Lyra's knees buckled, the fire searing through her veins, demanding more than her body could give. Kaelen dragged her back as the soldiers faltered. Riven shouted for retreat, Mira already hauling them toward the tree line. "Run," he hissed, blood soaking his sleeve. Lyra's vision blurred, silver sparks fading from her hands. She glimpsed Corvin once last time through the haze, tall, unflinching, smiling that cruel smile as though the hunt had only just begun. The crown's heir had seen her power, and he would not stop until he had broken her. Chapter 7. Bonds and Betrayals. Night fell heavy over the hills. The group had taken refuge in a ruined watchtower, its stones crumbling, its roof long collapsed. A small fire crackled in the center, throwing nervous shadows across tired faces. Lyra sat apart, her back against the wall, her hands trembling as though the moonfire still smoldered inside her. She replayed the battle in her mind again and again, the blinding light, the soldiers falling back, Corvin's unshaken smile. No matter how fiercely the fire had burned, it hadn't frightened him. That unsettled her more than anything. Kaelen's shoulder was bandaged now, Mira having worked in silence to stitch the wound. She moved with sharp, efficient hands, her brow furrowed in concentration. When she finished, Kaelen murmured his thanks, but Mira only shook her head. "You're lucky she was there," the healer said, nodding toward Lyra. "The rest of us would be corpses if not for her." Riven grunted, sharpening his sword against a stone. "Or if she hadn't drawn Corvin to us in the first place." The words stung. Lyra lifted her head. "You think I wanted this? You think I asked for any of it?" Riven's eyes met hers across the fire, hard and unyielding. "I think your power is a beacon, and beacons draw wolves. Men like Corvin don't stop hunting once they've tasted the chase. If you're with us, you put all of us at risk." Tamsin leaned back against a fallen beam, smirking. "And yet, here we all are, alive, mostly intact. I'd call that a win." Mira shot him a glare. "You'd call a knife to the gut a prank if it suited you." "True," Tamsin said cheerfully. Lyra folded her arms, heat prickling behind her eyes. "If you want me gone, say it. I'll leave. I've done it before." For a long moment, no one spoke. The fire crackled. The wind moaned through the broken stones. Then Kaelen's voice broke the silence. "She stays." Riven turned on him, anger sparking. "You don't command me, scholar. You don't even command yourself." Kaelen's gaze held steady. "I've studied the old prophecies. I've seen what happens when Moonfire rises again. Without her, we have no chance. With her, we may have won." His eyes flicked to Lyra, softer now. "Besides, she didn't ask for this. None of us did. But fate doesn't care what we ask." The weight of his words settled heavily. Riven grumbled but said no more, returning to his blade. Mira tied her satchel with a sharp tug, her disapproval clear. Tamsin hummed as though none of it mattered. Lyra's chest tightened with conflicting emotions, guilt, anger, relief. She hadn't meant to endanger them. She hadn't meant for any of this. Yet they were here, bound together by something larger than choice. Later, when the others drifted into restless sleep, Lyra found herself alone by the embers. Kaelen stirred, wincing as he shifted closer. "You saved me today," he said quietly. "I nearly killed myself doing it," she murmured. His lips curved into the faintest smile. Power always asks a price. The question is whether the price is worth paying. She met his eyes. For a moment, the ruined tower, the blood, the danger, all of it faded. In their place was a warmth that had nothing to do with fire. Lyra looked away first, her cheeks burning hotter than the embers. "Get some rest, scholar." Kaelen chuckled softly, retreating to his corner. But long after his breathing evened out, Lyra remained awake, staring into the dying flames.
Chapter 8. Siege at Dawn. Dawn broke sharp and red across the mountain pass. The group had taken shelter in a fortress long abandoned, its walls cracked but still standing. From its towers they could see the narrow road winding below, and the banners of Corvin's army approaching like a flood of iron. Riven cursed under his breath as he watched the soldiers march. He brought half a battalion. For 5 of us? "Not 5, Kaelen said grimly, glancing at Lyra. 1. Lyra's stomach twisted. She had not yet recovered from the last battle. Her veins still hummed with the memory of Moonfire, her body aching from the strain. "I can't face them all." "You don't have to," Mira said, tightening the bandage on her arm. "You just have to survive long enough for us to hold the rest." Tamsin flashed his usual grin, though even his eyes were tight. "Nothing like impossible odds to start the morning, shall we?" The horns blared. Corvin's voice carried from below, commanding, merciless. "Burn the fortress. Bring me the girl alive." Arrows darkened the sky. The first wave slammed against the fortress gates, shields and swords crashing. Riven met them head-on, a whirlwind of steel, his blade flashing in the rising sun. Mira hurled burning oils from the walls, her face grim with focus. Tamsin slipped into the chaos, striking quick and vanishing again, laughter echoing as though mocking death itself. Lyra stood at the heart of it all, the moonfire restless inside her. Fear battled with exhaustion, but when she saw Kaelen stumble on the battlements, blood streaking his face, her choice was made. She raised her hands. The silver flame burst forth, a torrent brighter than the sunrise. It roared across the battlefield, searing through shields, igniting banners, scattering soldiers in terror. The very stones of the fortress walls seemed to glow, pulsing with her light. Corvin, far below, reined in his horse and watched. His soldiers broke ranks, some screaming, some fleeing, but he only smiled, unshaken. "Stronger than I expected. Good, let her grow." Inside the fortress, Lyra swayed, the moonfire draining her strength. Her vision blurred, sweat stung her eyes. She felt herself collapsing. And Kaelen was there, catching her before she fell. "Enough," Kaelen whispered. "You'll kill yourself." "But they'll break through." "Not today," Riven snarled, slamming the gate shut behind a mound of fallen soldiers. "They've had their taste. Let them choke on it." The horns sounded retreat. Slowly the tide of soldiers ebbed back down the pass. The fortress was scarred, broken, and soaked in blood, but it still stood. Lyra lay against Kaelen's shoulder, her body trembling. She had unleashed more power than ever before, and though it had saved them, she felt hollow, as if something had been torn from her. Outside, Prince Corvin lingered at the edge of the field, gazing up at the fortress. His smile was a promise. This was not defeat, but the beginning of the hunt. Chapter 9. The Hollow King Stirs. The fortress was silent after the retreat, save for the wind whistling through broken stones. The air reeked of smoke and iron, of victory tainted with dread. Lyra sat against the wall, her body still trembling, her breath shallow. The moonfire had left her hollow, a vessel scraped clean. Kaelen knelt beside her, worry etched deep in his face. "You cannot keep burning like this. The fire will consume you." Lyra wanted to argue, to insist she could bear it, but the words caught in her throat. She had felt it this time, the power clawing inside her, greedy, merciless. If she hadn't stopped, it would not only have devoured the soldiers, but her as well. The others spoke in hushed voices. Mira bound her wounds in silence. Riven cleaned his blade with slow, deliberate strokes, though his eyes flicked often to Lyra, as if weighing whether her power was worth the danger it brought. Tamsin, unusually quiet, sat perched on a fallen beam, twirling a dagger without his usual grin. Then the wind shifted, cold, unnatural. The fire in the center of their camp sputtered, smoke curling upward unnaturally fast. The shadows lengthened against the walls, stretching too far, bending at wrong angles. Lyra's heart froze. Out beyond the fortress, the sky itself seemed to darken. The crescent moon hung pale above, and slowly, impossibly, a black shadow slid across it, not an eclipse, but something thicker, hungrier. Kaelen stood sharply, his face ashen. "No!" His voice trembled. "It's too soon!" From the darkness rose a shape. At first it was smoke, swirling, formless. Then it coiled and solidified, rising higher than the fortress walls. A figure cloaked in shadow, its face hollow, its eyes burning with faint embers of hunger long denied. The Hollow King. The very air shuddered. The fortress stones groaned as though in pain. Lyra felt the moonfire inside her recoil, not with fear, but with fury, as if it recognized its ancient enemy. The figure's voice rolled like thunder, though no mouth moved. "At last, the flame returns, and with it, my freedom." The soldiers below, even those of Corvin's army, fell to their knees in terror. Some screamed, some wept. Corvin alone sat astride his horse, his expression unreadable, his gray eyes fixed on the shadow above. "Your kingdom rots while you bicker. Now it returns to me. As it was, so it shall be again." Lyra staggered to her feet, clutching at the wall for balance. Her heart hammered, her palms burned with silver sparks. Terror twisted in her gut, but beneath it burned something sharper. What is he?" she whispered. Kaelen's voice was grim, certain. "The end of all things. The Hollow King has awakened." The shadow's hollow gaze fell upon Lyra. Even at that distance, she felt it pierce through her flesh, reaching into her very soul. "Burn, little flame, burn until you are nothing, and all will be mine again," it whispered into her mind. Lyra gasped, stumbling back, her vision swimming. Kaelen caught her before she fell, his grip tight. The Hollow King's laughter shook the valley, echoing against the cliffs until it felt like the earth itself was breaking apart. And as suddenly as it had risen, the shadow dissolved into smoke, leaving the moon blotted and the world colder than before. No one spoke for a long time. Even Tamsin's tongue had stilled. At last, Mira broke the silence. "If that is what we face, we are already dead." Lyra clenched her fists, silver sparks still dancing faintly between her fingers. Terror twisted in her gut, but beneath it burned something sharper. "No," she whispered, "not while I still breathe."
Chapter 10. The Last Sanctuary. The days after the Hollow King's appearance were filled with silence. Even the wind seemed afraid to whisper too loudly. The group traveled west, leaving the blood-stained fortress behind, their path winding through valleys and broken farmlands where frightened villagers stared at them with hollow eyes. Word of what had risen spread faster than fire, and every town seemed dimmer, as though hope itself had been snuffed out. It was Kaelen who led them to the sanctuary. Hidden in the cliffs of the Silver Range, the entrance was carved into stone, its gates sealed with runes that glowed faintly when Lyra approached. At her touch, the doors opened, sighing as though they had been waiting centuries. Inside stretched a vast cavern, lit by pools of moonlight that filtered through cracks in the stone. Hundreds of candles burned, though no one had lit them. And within the glow, survivors huddled, farmers, children, old warriors long thought dead, refugees who had fled the Hollow King's shadows. Gasps filled the air as they saw Lyra. Some fell to their knees, whispering prayers. Others only stared, eyes wide with fear and fragile hope. Riven stepped forward, his voice low but steady. "They need a leader, girl, whether you want it or not." Mira set her satchel down and began tending to the wounded without a word, her face set with grim determination. Tamsin for once said nothing, only watching the refugees with a look Lyra had never seen on him before, something close to sorrow. Kaelen guided Lyra to the central dais, where an old circlet lay on a stone pedestal. It was simple silver, tarnished with age, set with a cracked moonstone. "This belonged to the last guardian of Aloria," Kaelen whispered. "If you place it on your brow, there will be no turning back. You will not just be a girl who bears the flame. You will be its keeper, its weapon." Lyra's hand trembled as she lifted the circlet. The stone was cold against her skin, but as it settled on her brow, the moonfire inside her stirred, not with hunger this time, but with steadiness, like a river finding its course. The candles flared. The runes along the walls burned brighter. The refugees gasped, their fear easing into fragile cheers. Kaelen bowed his head. Riven lowered his sword. Mira paused in her work, her expression softening. Even Tamsin gave a slow, crooked smile. Lyra straightened, the silver circlet gleaming in the moonlight. For the first time, she did not flinch from the weight upon her shoulders. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe what they believed. She was heir of Aloria. She was the guardian reborn. And when the Hollow King came again, she would not run. She would burn.